All right, good evening again and welcome everyone. Um, those in the room may notice that I'm multitasking today, being minister and producer. And the reason for that is our board president, Brad, was on his way to church today. It's good news, I guess, for him. And he's a Red Cross volunteer. So he got dispatched to the site of a fire in Skiatook, I believe. So he called to say, can you handle both duties? I said, sure, it's all God, right? We can do this. But anyway, thanks again for Brad for volunteering of his time and talents and being so willing and available to, on a moment's notice, help those people in need. Our theme again this year is living out loud, right? And we are rolling through loudly through the themes. And we've had two great talks this month from Brad and from Chris on cultivating authenticity. And today's talk title is Boundaries Build Bridges, which is interesting, right? Because we believe we're all one. There's no separation between you and me. And when we're living our life in this complicated world of interpersonal interactions, someone wants to get in the room. Will you hit admit, Brad, or Dell? Join. Thanks, everyone. Stand by. Where was I? Okay, we're good. Thank you. So as I was saying, that we have this interaction of mix of moving through the world, and we see a world free of boundaries and separation. But as we move, as we build emotional and interpersonal boundaries in areas where it supports a more healthy life, then they have value. Cultivating authenticity, as we know, is not about becoming something other than who you are. It involves us releasing those patterns of thoughts and actions that act as barriers to us standing in our personal truth and power. Boundaries are where we end and the other begins. Nancy Levin, in her book, Setting Boundaries Will Set You Free, describes boundaries as a limit that you set to define what you will or will not do, or what you will or will not accept or tolerate from others. Beneath that all is love and understanding, but we can be more powerful when we have those experiences in our world and know what we will or will not accept or tolerate. If we desire to express ourselves authentically, then it's up to us to become familiar with and clarify these boundaries for ourselves and for others. Boundaries are the container in which our authentic self resides. So having clarity about our boundaries empowers us to know what is ours to be and do in the world. And until we communicate our boundaries and hold others accountable to them, we cannot expect others to honor them. Most of us, at least, are not mind readers, although there certainly could be some in the room. We all have intuition. But isn't interpersonal communication much clearer when we are able to share authentically? We may not feel comfortable sharing those boundaries because of beliefs that we have. It may feel selfish, or that we're being difficult, or even, God forbid, unspiritual, but it's still our responsibility. Letting others to know keeps us from being doormats or being stepped on, or at least feeling that way. It creates bridges to others by giving them a path to connect to us. It also prevents others from stepping on landmines that they didn't know were there, right? Unspoken boundaries and limits can let people step all over them, doing all kinds of wrong stuff without having any idea that you have an expectation there. Sharing our boundaries invites us to get to know one another better. Reverend Dr. David Alexander is an important prophetic voice for social justice in our community. He's the manager of the Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. And I'd like to share some of his thoughts as we consider living our own authenticity and supporting others to do so as well. He shared the words of Dr. Holmes in an article he wrote this week. Whoever you are, be proud. You are a divine idea in the mind of God. Remember in the last week, Chris talked about putting on a coat, putting on armor, or putting a lampshade over our heads to dim our light in relation to other people based on what we think they may be expecting. Instead, Ernest Holmes says, whoever you are, be proud. So today in our country, there are over 380 bills in state legislatures right now seeking to limit, outlaw, and criminalize the transgender lifestyle, education, healthcare, and limit access to basic civil rights. You may not know about transgender healthcare, but I have several friends who are transgender, and one even left the state of Oklahoma this week, packed up his car and drove to Michigan because he didn't feel welcome anymore and was concerned about access to healthcare. I also have minister friends who are in our movement who are transgender, teaching and living a beautifully magnificent, authentic life. I also have family friends who have children who are transgender. And I can only imagine when it comes to authenticity, what the path is, what the spiritual path is of going from a place of being born in one physical manifestation of a body, yet to have the deep spiritual knowing of something different. And that path to revealing the willingness to be fully authentic takes so much beauty and power and love for a family to work through that in any way. Most of us grew up in a binary world construct, black and white, right and wrong, this way, that way, A and B. It's easier to navigate life in some ways, right? It's easier to navigate life when we have a simple A and B, left and right. Life is so much more nuanced than that. We don't have to understand the complicated dynamics of sexuality and biology and gender identity to enlist compassion and support for the rights of our transgender friends. David shared, if personal related experience were a prerequisite to compassion, empathy, and advocacy, then our world and shared humanity would look much different. Yet this is exactly the premise on those who are writing anti-trans legislation use to do their bidding. They are counting on stirring up the fear of the unknown to deliver votes and support for their, I believe, inhumane attack on civil liberties. We live in a world of diversity across so many spectrums of life. And the protection of human dignity cannot be entrusted to the dynamics of a liberal versus conservative politics. Rather, it must be entrusted to each of us as human beings. That is why it's important for the New Thought community of which we are part to be active not only by speaking for love, but also to speak out against fear and hate that is running rampant in our polarized binary society, often coming once again from the fear of the unknown. To legislate to limit access to life-affirming and often life-saving healthcare for our transgender friends and families asserts that someone else knows better than individuals, families, and their doctors. The result is furthering the misperception that some are other than and not welcome. David shared that the right to be authentic, the right to be your authentic self-love and have access to the support you require for that must be a sacred, protected right for all without exception. He says, and I agree, the role of the prophetic voice in spiritual communities is not to take sides on political topics, but rather to cut through the fake and divisive narrative and please call humanity back to its senses. That is our voice. I stand to say that from a God perspective, this false sense of separation is not acceptable and not true. We are all emanations of the one, and I want our transgender friends to know that they are loved and indeed welcome here. And when their very lives are threatened, I want them to know that we are here for you. And so this is a boundary that I've set. And I think that moving through the world, taking this place for love and for passion, compassion, and for a deep knowing that we are here to speak this word and also to take it into the work that we know. We know that love is at the center and circumference of all we are and all that we do. So when we take that into our prayers, when we take that and set boundaries with the people in our lives, I'm not saying shut people out, but to be able to courageously speak what our beliefs are, then our community will vibrate at a different level. When we take that into our moments of prayer and meditation and the quiet moments when that false sense of separation, which is the root cause of all of our problems at the end of the day, it begins to diminish. Those parts of our brain get activated. Those parts of our brain that say, yeah, this is one. We are part of the one fiber of all life, and all folks are a part of that. Let's take a breath now. So there are 3 points I want to cover today as well. Boundaries, we don't have to make them up. We need to uncover them. Number 2, practice courage and communicate. And number 3, no is a complete sentence. I love that phrase. So the first one, boundaries, we don't need to make them up, we need to uncover them. Boundaries build bridges, as I've said. We need to communicate our boundaries. Others cannot read our mind, and it is an assumption that everyone knows this about me. That does not absolve us from our responsibility to communicate those boundaries. It is an authentic expression to practice courage and to be vulnerable, because we are sharing who we are rather than who we are not. It gives others a path to connect to us, builds a bridge. There are boundaries around our physical, mental, and emotional bodies. We also have boundaries around our time and energy and material goods. It never feels good when our limits are crossed without our consent. And when you don't feel good, it can help you discover the boundaries that you didn't know that you currently have. So when there's an ask of you in any way and it doesn't feel good, there's an opportunity to ask that question, what is in this for me? As opposed to just saying, squish, squash, go away, this doesn't feel good. That discomfort is calling us to say, why am I uncomfortable here? Is there a boundary that I'm not aware of? So take some time to become familiar with your boundaries, your non-negotiables. It's another method of self-discovery. Once you know where you are at, from there you can create boundaries and communicate them to others. Number 2, practice courage and communicate. Communicating our boundaries may feel difficult and scary, but like any skill, it will get easier the more that you do it. This morning, I had a session with my practitioner who I sit with, and she helps me know the truth. And I shared that I would be speaking on boundaries today and talking about authenticity and the unfolding of the transgender community. I said, why am I uncomfortable with this? And she said, I don't know. But she said, we're going to pray on it, right? And of course, part of this theme is having the courage to communicate when we feel called to do so. Avoidance may feel easier, but there are consequences once boundaries have been crossed. There's a natural reaction to push back bringing with it many other emotions. So deciding to be brave and ask for what you need or share where you stand may not get us the results that we had hoped for. Life would be easier if everyone just fell in line with what we wanted. And I haven't figured that one out yet. Plus, life would be boring. This being a new conversation may feel to others like you are putting limits on your relationship. The boundaries were always there, but they didn't know until now that they existed. Authenticity, not stuffing, not ignoring, not putting it away. Think about the times when we looked a friend in the eye and had that deep conversation that may have been about differences, and out of that we came stronger. If expressing your authentic self with someone is a problem for them, it may be time to evaluate your boundaries about how willing you are to tolerate people who do not respect your boundaries. There are times where I need to make changes about relationships. We would not feel guilty if a friend asked us for change and we didn't have any cash on us. We should not feel guilty about saying no. To give what you have to give what you do not have to give robs yourself and creates resentment. No is a complete sentence. So knowing, K-N-O-W-I-N-G, our values and limits, empower us to live in alignment with them. It helps us to say yes to our yeses and no to our nos. As we live out loud in the world, it is up to us to honor those boundaries by clarifying them with others. One way is to say no, and that is our right. No creates its own boundary. No is a complete sentence that may not need an explanation. When we say yes, when we mean no, or we compromise our comfort in order to please someone, or we give in to something that we don't want, it is our authentic self that is being disrespected. In many situations, it is we that are the ones that are crossing our own boundaries, right? Going back to Chris, right? What do people think of me? How do I want to look and show up in the world? If I have those boundaries and cross them, then I'm moving out of my authenticity. So honoring our own boundaries is an act of self-love that cultivates our authenticity. When we say no to one thing, we say yes to something else. By clarifying our limits, we are making space for us to live out loud. We teach others how to be with us. How will others know how to treat us if we do not let them know? If we are waiting to see if they will respect what we believe, they should have known all along. We are playing games that sabotage our relationship. It is a setup for all involved. Once we know our boundaries, it's an act of love to share them. It invites them to understand us better and to be able to communicate from the heart. When boundaries do get crossed, and they will, we can have heart-to-heart conversations for reconciliation. If we remain quiet when a boundary has been crossed and it matters to us, our hearts remain separate. And we'll feel bad while we may inwardly judge and resent others. This now cuts us off from having compassion for them when needed. How can we love someone who has been using us? So authenticity, my friends, is a practice. We can start it right now here where we are today. Forgive ourselves and others from being perfectly imperfect and begin again. Loving ourselves and others to be brave and clarify. This is what I will or will not do. This is what I will or will not accept. When we do that, we'll build bridges of connection. And again, it's an act of living out loud. So a final quote for today. Actually, before I read this quote, When I think about the metaphysical aspect of what we're talking about today, we are all vibratory beings, right? And that as we allow ourselves to be in the flow, we have better outcomes in our lives. We can allow prosperity and abundance to flow. We can allow our bodies to heal themselves and have a healthy, whole embodiment. In our relationships, we can have a deeper expression of love and self-love. And we can know that all our needs are met. When we're living inauthentically, and if we're in relation with others in our lives where boundaries are unspoken and affecting both parties, that vibratory flow of energy is garbled up, it stops, it shoots out in other directions, manifesting all kinds of crazy stuff that's not healthy for us. So that this practice of acting in the world with the people in our lives gives us that opportunity to have a more whole-bodied experience of our life. And it may take a little bit of courage and being brave, first with ourselves and discerning what we need to do, and then speaking it into the world. So Rachel Simmons, who wrote a book, The Curse of the Good Girl, Raising Authentic Girls with Courage and Confidence, said, when kindness comes at the expense of truth, it is not a kindness worth having. So may you have the discernment to identify and explore your boundaries and the courage to act with that on them with love. And so it is. So let's pray. Before we pray, let's shake out our hands a little bit, get the energy flow moving in this room and online. To know that sometimes when we talk, it's not all sunshine and moonbeams, but underneath it is all sunshine and moonbeams. So let's go into this place of prayer. I speak this word of truth in the first person because it is what I know. I know that the one power, the one life, the one omnipresent it that I know to be spirit has deep within itself, back of all life experiences, beauty and love, peace and purpose and wholeness. There is no place that spirit is not. And let's use math for a moment as I talk to spirit. If that's true, then I must also be in complete alignment, having within me all of those qualities of the one life. And I know it to be the truth of all. So each person in this room, online or listening later, I know that you are an emanation, 100% spirit. And so in this moment, I know and declare that as we move through our lives, as we discern and navigate the path forward, we allow ourselves to set healthy, productive, beautifully magnificent boundaries that uplift the vibration on the planet, that bring us a deeper expression in our relationships with others, and at a very minimum, move us into an alignment of authenticity with ourselves. And from that place, we can call forward all good in life, knowing in this moment and beyond that all of our friends, everyone on this planet, including our transgender community, are wrapped in love and safety and security, that they have access to all that they need to have a full, whole, complete, and fully authentic life. I know it to be true. I know it to be true right now. And so we move forward with thanksgiving, grateful to know that the one life is all, grateful to know that despite outward appearances in this world, there is a greater space of love emerging. I know it because it's already true. It's God, and I give thanks for that knowing. And so these words of prayer are powerfully, beautifully, magnificently, and gently let go. Let go into the fertile soil of life that responds with growth. And I let this prayer go. And if you'd like to join me in anchoring that, and so it is. Amen. I got to be a producer again.